Charlie Chaplin stands before the cracked mirror in his cramped boarding house room on Pownall Terrace, studying the unfamiliar face that stares back at him through the spider web of fractures that split his reflection into fragments. At 14 years old, his features are changing daily, his jaw becoming more defined, his eyes taking on depths they never possessed as a child, and a faint shadow appearing above his lip that hints at the mustache he will someday make famous. As he leans closer to examine this evolving stranger in the glass, his reflection seems to whisper with startling clarity. Who are you, really? What will you become? Are you Charles Spencer Chaplin, the abandoned workhouse boy, or someone entirely different waiting to be discovered? What unfolds during the next 6 hours and 47 minutes of intense self-examination doesn't just mark one teenager's struggle with identity. It represents the crucial moment when a young person must choose between accepting the limitations others have imposed upon them or believing in possibilities that exist only in their imagination, and demonstrates how self-knowledge often emerges not from external validation but from the courage to envision yourself as someone worth becoming. Pownall Terrace Boarding House, Lambeth, March 22, 1903, Sunday morning, 7:15 a.m. The second-floor room that Charlie rents for 2 shillings per week represents his first taste of genuine independence, a space of his own, however modest, where he can think, dream, and practice his craft without interference from workhouse supervisors or the chaotic demands of street survival. The mirror, cracked from corner to corner by some previous tenant's frustration or accident, has become his most important companion during these months of transition from childhood to whatever comes next. Charlie has been studying his reflection obsessively for weeks, fascinated and disturbed by the changes he sees. The face looking back at him bears only marginal resemblance to the frightened child who emerged from Lambeth workhouse 6 months ago. That boy's features were soft, undefined, marked primarily by hunger and uncertainty. This emerging face shows angles, character lines, and an intensity that surprises him. "I don't recognize myself," Charlie murmurs to his fractured reflection, tracing the outline of his changing jaw with his fingertips. "Every week I look different. Every week I feel like a completely different person inside." This physical transformation coincides with equally dramatic changes in Charlie's circumstances and self-understanding. After years of being told he was worthless, unwanted, and destined for failure, he has begun experiencing small successes that challenge everything he believed about his capabilities and prospects. 3 weeks ago, he earned his first steady income performing with Casey's Court Circus, a traveling variety show that specializes in comedy sketches and musical performances. For the first time in his life, people are paying to watch him entertain them, laughing at his jokes and applauding his physical comedy routines. But who is the person they're applauding? Charlie asks his reflection. Are they laughing at Charles Chaplin, or are they laughing at someone I'm pretending to be? This question strikes at the heart of Charlie's identity crisis. Having spent his entire childhood adapting to survive, becoming whatever each situation required, he has lost track of who he actually is beneath all the performed personas. The cracked mirror seems particularly appropriate for this self-examination because it shows him multiple versions of himself simultaneously. Depending on how the light hits the fractured glass, he can see his face as confident or uncertain, handsome or ordinary, destined for greatness or doomed to mediocrity. Maybe that's the truth, Charlie tells his reflection. Maybe I'm all of these different people at once, and I need to decide which one becomes real. Charlie begins experimenting with different expressions and personas, using the mirror as his audience and laboratory. He practices the shy smile that has been earning him sympathy and assistance from landladies and shop owners. He rehearses the confident grin that helps him command attention when performing on stage. But as he cycles through these various expressions, Charlie realizes that each one feels slightly artificial, like a mask he puts on for specific purposes rather than a genuine expression of his inner self. Who am I when nobody is watching? Charlie whispers to his reflection. Who am I when I'm not performing for survival or trying to please an audience? This question proves more difficult to answer than Charlie anticipated. Having spent years focused entirely on immediate survival, he has never had the luxury of contemplating his authentic preferences, natural personality, or genuine aspirations beyond simply staying alive. Charlie decides to conduct an experiment. He will spend the day observing himself when he thinks no one else is paying attention, noting which thoughts, feelings, and impulses feel most natural and unforced. Beginning at 8:30 a.m., Charlie starts a mental inventory of his authentic responses to various situations. When he encounters Mrs. Patterson, his elderly landlady, he notices that his instinctive reaction is protective concern for her obvious loneliness, not calculation about how to manipulate her sympathy. I genuinely care about people, Charlie realizes. That's not performance, that's something real about who I am. When he passes a group of street children playing with a ball made of rags, his immediate impulse is to join their game and make them laugh, not to avoid them to protect his own slightly improved social status. I enjoy making people happy, Charlie observes. Bringing joy to others gives me pleasure even when there's no benefit to myself. As the morning progresses, Charlie continues cataloging authentic aspects of his personality that exist independent of survival requirements or performance demands. He discovers that he possesses genuine curiosity about other people's stories, instinctive sympathy for anyone suffering hardship, and deep appreciation for beauty wherever he finds it. But Charlie also identifies darker aspects of his character, resentments he carries about his childhood treatment, fierce determination to prove wrong everyone who dismissed him as worthless, and ambitions for recognition and success that sometimes feel overwhelming in their intensity. I'm not just the sweet, sympathetic person I pretend to be, Charlie admits to his reflection when he returns to his room at midday. I'm also angry, driven, and sometimes petty. I want people to love me, but I also want to be important enough that the people who hurt me will regret how they treated me. This honest self-assessment proves both liberating and troubling. Charlie feels relief at acknowledging the full complexity of his personality, but he also worries about whether his darker impulses make him a bad person undeserving of the success he craves. The cracked mirror seems to offer perspective on this concern. In the fractured glass, Charlie can see both his gentle, caring expressions and his harder, more ambitious looks simultaneously. Neither reflection is more accurate than the other. They are both authentic aspects of his complete personality. Maybe being complex isn't a flaw, Charlie tells his reflection. Maybe having contradictory impulses makes me more human, not less worthy. This insight helps Charlie understand why his stage performances have been increasingly successful. Audiences respond to the genuine emotions he expresses, even when those emotions are complicated mixtures of vulnerability and strength, innocence and determination. By 2:30 p.m., Charlie has identified what he believes to be the core truth about his identity. He is someone who has survived extraordinary hardship while maintaining the capacity for joy, compassion, and hope. This combination of experience and resilience gives him unique understanding of both suffering and the human need for laughter as relief from that suffering. I know what it feels like to be forgotten, dismissed, and abandoned, Charlie tells his reflection. But I also know what it feels like to find moments of happiness despite terrible circumstances. That knowledge is valuable. It's something I can share with other people through my performances. This realization helps Charlie understand his artistic mission more clearly. His comedy should serve people who, like himself, need laughter as temporary escape from difficult realities. His performances can provide the same kind of emotional relief that he sought during his worst moments of childhood despair. But Charlie also recognizes that achieving this artistic mission will require developing skills and opportunities far beyond his current capabilities. He needs training, experience, and platforms that will allow him to reach larger audiences and create more sophisticated entertainment. What I am now is not what I have to remain, Charlie tells his reflection. I can choose to become someone different while staying true to what's genuinely good about who I already am. This understanding leads Charlie to make several important decisions about his immediate future. First, he will continue working with traveling variety shows to gain experience and develop his craft, but he will also seek opportunities in more prestigious venues that offer better training and exposure. Second, he will begin studying other performers more systematically, analyzing their techniques and adapting their methods to his own style and content. He recognizes that natural talent must be supplemented by technical knowledge if he wants to achieve professional excellence. Third, he will start developing original material based on his own experiences rather than simply copying routines he has seen other performers execute. His unique background gives him access to emotional truth that more privileged entertainers cannot authentically portray. Most importantly, Charlie decides to stop apologizing for his ambitions or pretending that his desire for success is purely altruistic. He wants recognition, respect, and financial security for their own sake, not just as means to help other people. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be successful, Charlie tells his reflection. Ambition becomes destructive only when it eliminates compassion for others or gratitude for whatever opportunities you receive. As evening approaches, Charlie conducts one final examination of his reflection, this time looking for signs of the person he hopes to become rather than cataloging who he currently is. "I see someone who will work harder than anyone expects," Charlie tells the cracked mirror. "Someone who will remember what it feels like to be powerless and will use success to create joy for people who need it most. Someone who will become important enough that his childhood suffering will transform into the foundation for art that matters." The fractured mirror shows him all these possibilities simultaneously: the determined performer, the compassionate artist, the ambitious young man, and the survivor who refuses to be defined by his past limitations. "I am Charlie Chaplin," he declares with newfound certainty. "Not Charles Spencer Chaplin, the workhouse boy, not whatever people expect me to be, but someone entirely new who contains the best of what I've learned and the best of what I hope to become." This moment of self-recognition proves transformative in ways that extend far beyond adolescent identity formation. By choosing to see himself as someone worthy of success rather than someone lucky to survive, Charlie grants himself permission to pursue opportunities that previously seemed impossibly beyond his reach. 6 weeks later, when Charlie auditions for a position with the Fred Carnot Comedy Company, a prestigious organization that represents the pinnacle of British music hall entertainment, he draws confidence from his mirror moment understanding of his authentic identity and artistic mission. "I know who I am and what I have to offer," Charlie tells the Carnot directors during his audition. "I'm someone who understands what audiences need because I've needed the same thing myself." His performance that day demonstrates exactly the combination of technical skill and emotional authenticity that emerges from genuine self-knowledge. The directors recognize something special in Charlie's approach to comedy, a depth and sincerity that distinguishes him from performers who possess talent but lack meaningful connection to their material. Years later, when journalists ask Charlie about the sources of his artistic vision, he often returns to that Sunday morning in his boarding house room when he first learned to see himself clearly. "That day taught me the difference between knowing yourself and accepting what others tell you about yourself," Charlie explains in a 1925 interview. Most people never question whether the limitations others impose on them are actually true. They assume that because they've been told they're worthless, they must actually be worthless. "What changed for you that morning?" "I realized that my value as a person and as a performer had nothing to do with how other people had treated me in the past. My worth was determined by what I chose to do with my experiences, not by the experiences themselves." Why was the mirror important to this realization? Because the mirror showed me not just how I looked, but how I saw myself. I could choose to see someone defeated by circumstances, or I could choose to see someone strengthened by overcoming those circumstances. The face in the glass was the same either way. The difference was in my interpretation of what that face represented. The 6 hours and 47 minutes Charlie spent examining his reflection that Sunday morning proved that authentic self-knowledge requires the courage to see yourself as someone capable of growth rather than someone limited by history, and that identity formation is ultimately a choice about which aspects of your complexity you decide to develop rather than simply accepting whatever characteristics seem most obvious or have been reinforced by others' expectations.